right, and we're live. Another unpaid advertisement for the cult drink. This is the Kalima blood of the Amazon. Gayaki Yaramate. It's what powers these videos. It's going to be the new cult too. The Gayaki brand cult, based on the. This is what the goddesses drank in Amazon of goddesses. Um, it's going to be the new cult that joins the CNP. So we are going on to the next article called Alan Dulles, William F. Buckley, and the Nazi International. And to make these videos a little easy to understand what's going on in each of them, I think I'm going to can the stupid thumbnails that I've made, and I'm going to put a screenshot of the title of the article on each of the videos, and then a little 1, 2, 3, 4 with the colors or something, Sesame Street 1, 2, 3, 4 on each of the videos, and then you'll get a better idea of the topical relevance of each video. It's also by Scott Thompson. I think all the articles pretty much by Scott Thompson for Executive Intelligence Review, and this is April 20th, 1982. So, Alan Dulles, William F. Buckley in the Nazi International. Yeah. Over the last 2 years, a global reorganization of the fascist Malmö International has occurred, pulling out of the woodwork the post-war remnants of the secret police and intelligence services of the defeated Axis powers, especially the Nazis, who regrouped into networks like Odessa, HIAG, and Die Spinne, the Spider. Together with their heirs, these old Nazis are being used to assist in preparation for a wave of regional destabilizations by separatist armies for political assassinations by the left and right-wing terrorist groups. I remember kind of criticizing the Nazi Interpol connections in those previous articles, 1, 2, 3, 4. They keep using the term Nazi Interpol. That actually happened. I had posted it in the chat. And I think even the New York Times talked about it. All of the German secret police that were recruited into, first allegedly through infiltration, recruited into Interpol to work for Interpol. So, yeah, I thought it was crazy at first. I thought it was over exaggeration. It's not. Anyway, going on. Marching orders for the reactivation of the Malmo International have been issued by the same Anglo-Swiss Venetian oligarchy, which imposed fascist regimes upon Europe in 1920s and 1930s and protected the relocation of thousands of leading Nazis and their quisling allies to safe havens after World War II. So, when they say Anglo-Swiss Venetian oligarchy, if you understand history, if you understand how history happened, Switzerland as a state was founded by Genoese Venetian individuals who wanted to move their banks north. I don't exactly remember the reason, but initially Switzerland was just this grouping of little states. And these are the people that pulled it all together. They organized the state like a corporation, and that's why Switzerland's important. It's directly these families lifting up over the border and going into Switzerland, over the Alps, I guess, right? And then the Anglo connection is where, I mean, there's always, in the city of London, there was always this connection because there was always this strong Catholic presence. It goes back all the way to William the Conqueror and all of that. But Venice actually supplied all the ambassadors for Henry VIII. Not all the ambassadors. What do I want to say? They supplied like Henry VIII's marriage counselor that convinced him later on to break with the church. They supplied all sorts of science and stuff. and basically formed an alliance with England, and eventually moved a lot of their operations there. Um, so a good source for that might be a little crazy, but Webster Tarpley's work on the Venetian oligarchy and cultural metastasis, I guess he calls it metastasis of the oligarchy. Um, it's a real thing. I don't think it's uncontested if you actually look at if you gather the grammar first, as Jan Irving says, and look at how it changed these countries and the fact that it did change these countries. One doesn't have to look at it from a conspiratorial standpoint. You just have to look at it as an interest of it's like the Chinese today or the Saudi Arabians. Everybody's talking about how much they're buying up different aspects of our industry. It's the same thing that happened there. Not a conspiracy. I mean, it is on some level, but there's a lot of unconspiratorial things that explain it too. And you don't have to outrightly reject it. I'm sure my viewership doesn't, but um, just for anybody else who might be watching. So I'm sure I bored you all. If you're bored, please join the cult. You get the yellow can at your supermarket, and we're going on. Marching orders for the reactivation of the Malmo International have been issued by the. Okay, we just read that. So he's left off. They're resurrecting the Nazi leaders out of their Quisling safe havens, and daily coordination of the Fascist International is carried out by monarchist cults like the Knights of Malta and their associates like the Sovereign Order of St. John, whose many branches unite the oligarchy through the British Secret Intelligence Service and factional allies in other nations. They're an interlocking network of banks, corporations, and law firms, many of which helped fund Hitler and Mussolini, and through such affiliates of the Malmo International as European Center for Documentation. We talked about that before. The Pan-European Union, that's Otto Habsburg's wing. Eurojust, and also Prince Lobkowitz's wing, the main guy that is behind E. Michael Jones' solidarist economic theory. Eurojust and the World Anti-Communist League. In the United States, it is the political faction represented by the Undersecretary for State Security Assistance James Buckley and National Review publisher William F. Buckley, together with some of the members of such groups as the East Side Conservative Club, which we talked about in the last video, and the Gotham Club, which functions today as the principal controllers of the Malmo International Terrorism. The Buckleys have inherited this role from the Dulles family. John Foster and Alan Dulles used their respective positions as Secretary of State of Central Intelligence to incorporate elements of the Malmo International into U.S. Cold War operations ranging from 1956 Operation Splinter Factor, the stabilization of Eastern Europe, to 1963 Bay of Pigs invasion fiasco. They also drew upon lifelong ties to the financial interests that put Hitler into power and upon Alan Dulles' fellow Office of Strategic Services veterans to mount major private intelligence operations using the Malmo International. On the U.S. end, this private channel includes members of such law firms as Sullivan and Cromwell, Coulthard Brothers, and Corcoran, Foley, Youngman, and Rowe, as well as the United Brands Company. That's the United Brands Company of one of the mega group founders, Max Fisher. The Malmo International regroups. As part of the regroupment of new centralized command for the Nazis, has been created within the European headquarters in Geneva, Zurich, and Liechtenstein, and Latin America headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela, Montevideo, Uruguay, and Guadalajara, Mexico. A move is now underway to bring the Nazis and their allies into the United States in the near future. One of the premier banks still used to launder frauds of branches of the Malmo International is the Lombard Odier Bank of Lausanne, on whose board sits the relatives of George Ultra-Mayer, the head of the Fascist National Union Party of Switzerland. Another major funding conduit is the Banque de Liechtenstein-Vaduz, which is also used by Parmendex, the Center of Murder Incorporated, networks combining former Nazis and Jewish gangsters, that's the Meyer Lansky group, under British SIS control that carried out the assassination of President John F. Kennedy and over 30 unsuccessful attempts to assassinate President Charles de Gaulle. Ironically, this is also the bank led by the Israeli gangster terrorist Samuel Flato Sharon, who has formed his teams with a section of Mossad affiliated with Rafi Eitan in the name of fighting fascism. Several arms companies and other firms have created to provide logistics in the Malmo International. After the British intervened to secure his release at Nuremberg, SS Colonel Otto Scarface Skorzeny, who Blofeld is based on, Hitler's favorite commando and son-in-law of Nazi finance minister Hjalmar Schacht, who I always mention, is E. Michael Jones's hero, set up an export-import firm called ADSAP in Madrid and another named World Armco in Paris. These supplied the 5 divisions Scarenzi boasted he could raise for special operations. OTRAG is another firm that's suspected of supplying arms to elements of Malmo International. As part of this recent regroupment, OTRAG relocated its center of operations from Libya to Pakistan. In almost every area of the world, the Malmo International and its affiliates are actively a part of destabilizations and terrorism. Remember, this is in 1984. Increasingly, since May 1968, the implementation of NATO's strategy of tension, the fascists can be found as behind-the-scenes controllers of left-wing terrorism. A few examples of this global activation include in the Balkans. Lord Nicholas Bethel is currently overseeing the Balkan destabilization that includes playing off Serbia-Croatian hostilities in Yugoslavia and pitting Yugoslavia against Albania. In order to play the Balkan card, Bethel has drawn upon networks established by the British SIS officer Fitzroy MacLean, who established contacts with the major fascist parties, their monarchist supporters, and their underground opponents during World War II. Among these are the Upper Croatian Ustashi, the dreaded secret police of the Nazi puppet independent state of Croatia, whose skull crusher units brutally murdered 200,000 Serbs, Jews, and Gypsies. Under the umbrella, the Ustashi have been linked to terrorism by right-wing OPTOR and left-wing Croatian National Liberation Front that is believed to have ties to the Red Army faction in Germany. A parallel Albanian fascist group known as Bali Kombëtar is headed by a former premier of Albania, Fanoli. Albania. Kaputs. The Bali Kombëtar have been agitating for the annexation of Yugoslav province of Kosovo by Albania. The group is believed to have ties to the Red Flag, a left-wing terrorist group based in Germany, which has carried out several assassinations of Albanian exiles. In the Middle East, the Lebanese Phalange has long served as a vehicle of the British and War Hawk faction of Israel to keep the region unstable. The Phalange was spawned by members of British Intelligence Arab Bureau in 1936 and consolidated by agents of the Abwehr's Brandenburg Division during World War II. Pierre Gemayel, the founder and current head of the Phalange, traveled to Germany in 1936 to attend the infamous Nazi Party Congress in Nuremberg. The Congress was attended by other Arab fascist groups under the ideological sway of the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, including the Green Shirts and Muslim Brotherhood, who are the Phalange behind-the-scene allies. So you see this playing out in recent times. In Egypt, in all the countries that had the Arab Spring revolutions in which the Muslim Brotherhood was the culprit. And how closely the Muslim Brotherhood is linked to Sufism, which is intricately linked into the oldest of the 19th century traditional Catholic movement. Starting with, I believe, the Jesuit Arthur Gobineau, Jesuit-trained Arthur Gobineau, who inspired Houston Stewart Chamberlain. It's Chamberlain, Julius Evola, and Kalergi that are virtually sole 3 people responsible for the racial science of Nazi Germany. So, just putting that out there. And that the Chamberlain and Gobineau intricately linked to the Arab Bureau of the Blunt family, and people like T.E. Lawrence and all of those individuals. Going on. I don't have time to name everybody who ever lived in history, so we're going on. In Mexico and Central America, the Lebanese Phalange and allied networks in the Antiochian Church run much of the left-wing terrorism. One of the key figures in this Archbishop Antonio Chedwari, head of the Antiochian Church in the region, who is also an agent of influence for the British SIS and the KGB. Chedwari works with the Ambubrad brothers, who made their fortune in cocaine trafficking and act as a financial conduit in the 23rd de September terrorists in Mexico. One of the brothers, Marwan, also works with the PLO training in Puerto Cabeza, Nicaragua, which was massively expanded after 100 million Libyan Nicaraguan friendship deals was signed. Caracas, Venezuela serves as a center for Lebanese Falange funding of both left and right wing terrorism in the region. Let me put this into the chat, this article. There's nobody saying hi, Iram. There's nobody yelling at me in all caps. Give me a like. Give me a like and keep going on. I'm just kidding. I gotta find my article again. Here we go. The left-wing groups are pitted in counter-gang warfare with the fascist death squads that are one of the principal reasons why horrible America is rapidly becoming uncontrollable. Among major death squads are Mano Blanca, the White Hand in Guatemala, whose head Sandoval Alcron is a member of the World Anti-Communist League and a presidential candidate in Guatemala's recent election. Another major group is the Alianza Anticomunista Argentina AAA Death Squad in Argentina. The creator of AAA was Jose Lopez Rega, the astrologer and principal advisor to Argentina dictator Juan Domino Perón, and the controller of Perón's widow, Isabel Martina de Perón, herself president of Argentina from 1975 to 1976. Lopez Rega, a member of the propaganda duo Freemasonic Lodge, was on intimate terms with propaganda duo's founder, the former OVRA Mussolini secret police member Licio Gelli. During Perón's exile in Spain in the 1960s, Lopez Rega also became an intimate of the fascist circles around Otto Skorzeny. It was through this connection that members of the French Connection heroin route were put in contact with the AAA. This is also why the Gnostic Church remains so close to tradition, family, and property. And I believe that somebody like Olavo de Carvalho, who was the presidential advisor for Jair Bolsonaro, is a self-professed Gnostic, and I believe runs around in the circles of the Gnostic Church membership. And the Gnostic Church is from Bulgaria, which is part of the French Connection. If you look into the French Connection, Bulgaria is one of the major shipping points. I was going to make some other point here. Oh, yeah. Today, in the traditional Catholic world, the Horvat family, which runs Tradition in Action, were actually the liaison for the Tradition Family and Property Group, which was part of Operation Condor and stuff that we'll read about now. I actually have the documents of Mr. Horvat, whose wife runs Tradition Family Property, runs around in circles with Michael Matt to come out and perform schismatic action every 20 years against the Pope. Yeah, they were the liaison for TFP for the saying, look, you're in the CIA. We offer you all the services that we can possibly muster. And then TFP is heavily involved, ends up being involved with like the Morena group in Colombia, PAN, drug trafficking in Mexico, drug trafficking in Venezuela, etc. So if you look at Tradition in Action, always extremely suspicious how the British monarchy can do no wrong. Like Prince Charles is their Christ at Tradition in Action, and I could never figure that out until I found that they were the CIA liaison to TFP for Operation Condor. Going on. In Corsica and Basque region of Spain, remember Father Maria Cron Fernandez, who is associated with TFP and SSPX and these Seed of Vacantist groups. He actually ends up joining these Basque radical movements in Spain as part of the Spanish Falange, and continued to, after attempting to assassinate Pope John Paul II, was given a light sentence, and then tried to attack Juan Carlos the second, um, and another king, I believe. Two different kings he tried to attack, and he still walks the streets today and is still recruiting kids into the new right. Has contacts in France, and the guy allegedly had carried out assassinations before that. So I'm just trying to offer alternative examples, modern day examples, so you can kind of see these networks still exist and they almost exist right in front of your face. These aren't people that are hidden away somewhere. These are people that are very prominent in Catholic circles, traditional Catholic circles. In Corsica and the Basque region of Spain, major separatist armies also exist. The Corsican and Frank Tireurs et Partisans, a terrorist unit of Corsican separatist army that maintains close ties with the mafia-dominated counterpart in Sicily, took part in April 1981 attempt to assassinate President Giscard d'Este on the eve of elections of France. These were assisted by the remnants of the Organization Armée Secrète (OAS), formed by the Vichyite officers in exile in Spain with the assistance of Scorzani and Richard Reinhard Galen, the former head of the Abwehr intelligence on the Eastern Front, who was picked up by the war after the war by Alan Dulles. The Basque separatists, including their two armies, ETA Militar and ETA Political Militar, are expected to be far more active in the near future. Over 10,000 people packed in a stadium in San Sebastian last month, at which mass members of the avowedly terrorist ETAM burned the Spanish flag, founded by Jesuits associated with the Basque National Party. The ETA has recently established ties with fascist Grey Wolves of Turkey, who provided protection for Mehmet Ali Agca on his journey to attempt an assassination of Pope John Paul II. So there's the other assassin. Two attempted assassinations of John Paul II, and they just so happen to be associated with these Basque radical movements. Alan Dulles and Operation Land of Fire. The Dulles brothers have been an integral part of the operation that put Hitler into power in Germany to serve as a marcher lord for a drive east into Soviet Union. John Foster Dulles, accompanied by his brother Alan, was one of the principal agents for Jean Monnet, Bernard Baruch, and Thomas Lamont of the Morgan banking family, who imposed a crippling debt reparation upon the German economy after World War I that opened the doors for fascism. And this is the same group identified by, I posted the paper somewhere, by the Treasury Department, especially under Henry Dexter White, of being the synarchist group that was funding Vichy France, Pétainism, which Pétainism was essentially a front for. During the 1920s and 1930s, both Dulles brothers played major roles in rearming of Germany by night. One of the principal entrees to Germany was through the law firm Sullivan and Cromwell, whose German representative, Dr. Gerhard Alois Westrick, was simultaneously a financial agent for Hitler and an Abwehr spymaster in the United States. Through Sullivan and Cromwell, the Dulles brothers stood at the center of financial and political deals, joining such firms as Standard Oil Company with IG Farm and Industry, one of the principal beneficiaries of Schock's slave labor program. It was as a result of these connections that John Foster Dulles was chosen to take part in the Dulles Plan loan renegotiations, but allowed Schock to fuel the Blitzkrieg economy. During the one trip to Germany in the late 1920s, Dulles not only took part in extensive discussions with Schock, but also held private meetings with Hitler. Alan Dulles was also a director of the J. Henry Schroeder Bank, whose German chairman, SS General Baron Kurt von Schroeder, was one of the main assistants to Schock and on the board of Schroeder Bank until 1944, well after he was taken his post as chief of the OSS in Switzerland. In Switzerland, Dulles used these private channels to enter into renegotiation with every section of the military intelligence party apparatus in Germany, Italy, Austria, and the Balkans. It was Dulles who, as part of the joint operation with the British SOE, blew the general's plot to assassinate Hitler, simultaneously turning over several thousand names of Humboldt-trained Prussian aristocrats who were part of the coup plot. When the back of German war machine was broken at Stalingrad, it was only natural that leading members of the SS and Abwehr turned to Dulles to execute Operation Land of Fire, a plan to transfer a large part of the Third Reich's funds to havens abroad. Now, I've heard it be called Operation Eagle's Flight, but they might be two prongs of the same fork. A plan to transfer a large part of Third Reich's funds to havens abroad, where trusted personnel would use these assets to reconstitute a fascist institutional for joint post-war operations. Operation Sunrise, the surrender of SS General Kurt Wolff and his Nazi units in Italy, was one of the more publicized parts of this scheme. The scope of Operation Land of Fire was staggering. Over 500 million in gold was shipped via South Africa to India and Hong Kong. Equivalent sums were laundered through Swiss banks to others in Liechtenstein, Austria, Portugal, Argentina, Uruguay, and other South American countries. A 1946 report issued by U.S. Treasury said that some of these funds had been used to purchase controlling interest in companies including 200 in Switzerland, 150 in Portugal, 110 in Spain, 100 in Argentina, and 30 in Turkey. A multi-tiered system of escape routes was set up. One, a spider web of underwater canals or escape routes was set up, heading via Switzerland to Italy or Spain, and thence to final destinations in Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America's southern cone. Over 100,000 Nazis and wartime allies used this route to escape to Argentina alone. Two, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, whose members included King Victor Emmanuel and Umberto II of the House of Savoy, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, Argentine dictator Juan Perón, and brother of Reinhard Gehlen, gave special diplomatic passports to monarchist supporters of the fascists. And we find again, SMOM was handing out diplomatic papers to individuals involved in the Iran-Contra drug smuggling rings because they have a non-nation state status. There's no nation state in which they can be prosecuted because they have these diplomatic papers. 3. Britain and the United States intervened to save leading Nazis as the nucleus around which to group other SS Abwehr and paramilitary specialists. Among these special cases were Gehlen, Scherzeny, Schacht, and the former head of SS Foreign Intelligence, Walter Schellenberger. Sir William Stevenson, head of the Special Security Coordination in the United States, later admitted that he had been personally informed of relocation plans a year in advance by Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, chief of the Abwehr. But instead of pursuing the Nazis to ground, Stevenson used the Galzenko atomic spy case to redirect others in the intelligence community along Churchill's Cold War policy line. Nelson Rockefeller, wartime coordinator for Inter-American Affairs, was ultimately fired by President Truman for his support of Perón and Nazi relocation in Argentina. John J. McCloy, former chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank and the Rockefeller Foundation, personally intervened on behalf of Schacht, leading executives of firms like IG Farben and high-ranking SS officers while serving as U.S. High Commissioner in Germany. So, yeah. E. Michael Jones especially always makes this case that Schacht is this little guy. This is just tearing the Schacht mythos apart. The Buckley inheritance. So here we come back to the Buckley family. And as we know, the Buckleys were the pets of the Rockefeller family under when Nelson Rockefeller took over the GOP. And so the Buckleys basically represent the supposed waning influence of the Rockefellers even today. The Buckley family and certain of their friends in the East Side Conservative Club are among the inheritors of these Malmo international networks. In 1976, the year when the last major activation of these Nazi networks occurred, a grid of travels of William F. Buckley, Lieutenant General Vernon Walters, now Haig's personal briefer, planned these two in every major terrorist hotspot. Greece, where the Paladin fascist networks involved in the assassination of the CIA officer Richard Welch set out to destabilize the Karamanlis government immediately after their arrival. The Caribbean, whereas the Buckley-Walters visit occurred, Orlando Bosch Cuban terrorist group Kourou bombed an Air Cubana flight, killing 77 passengers. Chile, where they met with officials of the Chilean junta and the DINA, its secret police arm. Spain, where Buckley used a meeting of Otto Habsburg's European Documentation Center as cover to meet with participants at an earlier Paris meeting of the World Anti-Communist League to give them final marching orders for a wave of assassination bombings that followed in Spain, France, and Italy by Nazi and anti-Nazi groups. And the United States were acquaintances of the Buckley family in Movimiento Nacional Cubana, an affiliate of CORU and the WACL, carried out the assassination of former Chilean Foreign Minister Orlando Letelier with backing from DINA. And he doesn't mention that this guy was car bombed in Washington, D.C. So, attacks on American soil by these Cuban fascist networks, which are typically lauded by people like the now deceased John McCain or Marco Rubio. The Buckley family's involvement in activities of the Malmo International was established through their father, William F. Buckley Sr., who worked with Standard Oil, Royal Dutch Shell, and Morgan Lamont interests to stage multiple counter-coup attempts against the Mexican Revolution until he was thrown out of the country in 1921 as a pernicious foreigner and his oil holdings confiscated. Buckley next moved to Venezuela, where he gained control over two-thirds of the country's oil deposits as a junior partner of Standard Oil. Buckley Sr. personally trained Nelson Rockefeller, who worked with him at Standard's Venezuelan subsidiary, Creole Petroleum, to carry out a series of revolving door coups that used networks of Buckley's senior close associates, Argentine dictator Juan Perón, and Spanish corporatist dictator Francisco Franco. Creole Petroleum was later to provide cover for operations run by the Dulles brothers in the Caribbean, working hand in glove with the mega group Max Fisher's United Fruit Company to orchestrate the 1953 Arbenz coup in Guatemala and the 1963 Bay of Pigs invasion. Coudert Brothers, the law firm for Buckley's estimated $110 million miniature oil empire, also had a fascist pedigree as the legal counsel to Vichy France. Sol M. Linowitz, a senior partner in the Coudert law firm, was also on the board of directors of United Brands, formerly United Fruit, in which Allen Dulles was a major stockholder at the time he was a CIA director. All right. Keep going. William Buckley Sr.'s, this is a very good article. This is very dense, a lot of information. William Buckley Sr.'s children were brought directly under Dulles' wing when three of them joined the CIA at the height of Allen Dulles' Cold War deployment of the old Nazi networks as part of his liberation rollback policy in Eastern Europe and a string of coups d'etats in Middle East and Latin America. William F. Buckley worked directly under E. Howard Hunt, then CIA Station Chief of Mexico, helping to weave elements of the Malmo International into the U.S. intelligence establishment. Other members of the family also played a role in the coordination of the Malmo International in Spain. F. Reed Buckley served as a liaison with Franco regime, which had provided a base of operations for Skorzeny and other top Nazis. And I believe these individuals also tried to stage a coup with Otto von Habsburg against Franco. Others with whom F. Reed, a member of Franco's Phalange from his youth, was in contact, including Leon de Grelle of the Belgian Rexists, did not die a Catholic, as most people think, was actually asked to be cremated like Baldur, and expressed to his New Agey Nazi friends in Argentina his disdain for the Catholic religion. Vitiate war criminals who helped found the OAS, and Ante Pavelic, the infamous butcher of the Nazis' independent state of Croatia. L. Brent Bozell, who I will remind you, his family are the initial funders of the Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, the Boys Town Orphanage, which supplied children to the Franklin Federal Credit Union under Lawrence C. King. L. Brent Bozell, a brother-in-law of the Buckley brothers, has plunged deeply into the pseudo-Catholic networks associated with the heretical Archbishop Lefebvre and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta that has been condemned by last two popes. Bozell formed Triumph magazine, of which the new Triumph magazine is under Sir Charles Coulomb, who, just somehow has all of these links to the New Age, to Gnosis magazine, which featured prominently Peter Lamborn Wilson, the pedophile founder of Temporary Autonomous Zones and NAMBLA member, and also a friend of the Gnostic Society of Hollywood. Just so happens that Bozo formed the Triumph Magazine Group, the pseudo-traditionalist Catholics. All seem to have kind of the same MO. They think you're too stupid to look 10 years into their past and see what they've done. And even created his own, this is L. Brent Bozell, own Red Beret shock troops, Son of Thunder. The Red Beret is the Carlists who in the 1980s formed with the United Left of Spain with the Communist Party, run by the Soviet government in Spain. Red Beret shock troops, Sons of Thunder, which he led in the streets with battles with U.S. police while chanting Cristo Rey, Christ the King. Terrorist group trying to institute by force Christ the King and the cult of Christ the King that's now so prevalent in traditional Catholicism. It's not that Christ the King is a bad concept. It's that they hijacked the meme to brainwash fascists to fight in the streets. In the summer of 1970, the Bozells organized the Christian Commonwealth Institute in El Escorial, Spain, which brainwashes Catholic youth in the formulation that the church must return to Jesuitical doctrines laid down by the Council of Trent in 1563. I think there are two Jesuit groupings that come out of the Council of Trent. One is the Zelanti faction, which can only be associated with historical zealotry of the what can properly be called the Jewish revolutionary spirit. And the other was the El Spirituali, which were the Protestant faction that came out of the Council of Trent. And then there was the rest of the church, which was left in the 30 Years' War, basically being beaten on both sides by the Zealots and the Protestants. That came out of this thing. Now, let me... the new Christian tribe is forming here, preparing themselves to shape the modern world, one institute bulletin proclaims. The new Christian tribe is forming here. Christian identity, Catholic Identity Conference, something that's the most ill-named grouping that I've ever heard of. And I know some of the people there, and they're good people, but so ill-named. There's no such thing as Catholic identity that's important. What's important is the Catholic faith, is the dogma, is the institution, not the identity. But this is how these people talk, because fundamentally, fascism is an identity politic movement. And that's why people like Alain de Benoit so prominently study, the founder of the New Right in France, so prominently study John Baudrillard and postmodern philosophy, because that is the basis for fascism now, is postmodern identity politics. It is such heretical Catholic layers that dominate part of the East Side Conservative Club through such members as Dr. Henry Paolucci, Timothy Mitchell of St. Michael's Forum and Pro Ecclesia, and Tom Bolin, the club's chairman, who is also a member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Through his membership of the order, Bolin is not only part of the group that provides diplomatic immunity for many monarchist collaborators of the Nazis, but also directly connected to leading members of the propaganda duo Freemasonic Lodge. Almost every intelligence and military chief ousted for their secret membership in the propaganda duo lodge were also members of the order. Bolin was recently appointed to head of the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, despite the fact that he was indicted on civil charges and his law partner and close friend Roy Cohn, homosexual pederast, AIDS-positive Roy Cohn, was indicted on criminal charges of bribery, conspiracy, and blackmail, stemming from the involvement in the Fifth Avenue coach line scandal. Cohn, another East Side conservative leader, is linked to Malmo International through his involvement with Permindex. In 1959, Cohn joined the board of directors of the Lionel Corporation, along with mafioso Joseph Bonanno. Lionel became a founding stockholder in Permindex, Permanent Industrial Expositions. While on the board of directors of Lionel, Cohn brought in General George Medeiros Jr., who had been fired by President Eisenhower for his activities on behalf of the military industrial complex as president of Lionel. According to an unpublished report, compelling information provided by both the U.S. and French intelligence agencies, Roy Cohn's connection to the Kennedy murder go even deeper. Using a representative of Intercontinental Company of Garland, Texas, a subsidiary of the Lionel Corporation, Cohn allegedly provided a Dallas-located agent to work with Permindex board member Ferenc Nagy, the former Hungarian premier, in preparing the assassination of the president. Which, if it was coming from Hungary, this means that Otto von Habsburg was involved in sending him over here. In preparing the assassination of the president, the unpublished report also places Cohn at fall 1963 meetings in Las Vegas, which it asserts involved planning the assassination of Kennedy. The Buckleys have other associations with Permindex networks. George de Morgenshield, from the right Russian leader, closely associated with the Rocor Church, being run out of the Romanovs' palace in New York. Leader associated with the NTS, who was assassinated before he could testify on his role as the controller of Lee Harvey Oswald, maintained close ties with the family. De Morgenshield worked for Nelson Rockefeller, and I believe he also worked for the Buckleys. The coordinator for Inter-American Affairs during World War II. Later, he joined the Buckleys' Pantepic oil firm in Venezuela, which was integrated into Standard Oil's massive Caribbean intelligence operations. When de Morgenshield left Pantepic, he developed several joint ventures with the Schlumberger Corporation, which is represented by Buckley's law firm Codart Brothers. Schlumberger is not only a major part of the United Fruit, Creole Petroleum, private intelligence operation that ran the Bay of Pigs, but Jean de Menel was also board of Permindex, and his wife is one of the most prominent international sponsors of Muslim Brotherhood terrorists. Going on, the World Anti-Communist League. One of the increasingly important affiliates for Malmo International is the World Anti-Communist League, which has been described as an alternate United Nations, drawing representatives from as many as 25 governments to its meetings. It maintains chapters in 89 countries today. The WACL was formed at a 1967 meeting in Taipei, which brought together the Asian People's Anti-Communist League, APACL, the Caribbean Legion, which was used for numerous coups in that region, and similar fascist and paramilitary groups from around the world. APACL has been founded in the 1950s by denazified Class A Japanese war criminals, including the godfather of the Japanese mafia, Ryuichi Sasagawa, by Taiwan strongman Chiang Kai-shek, and by South Korean leader Syngman Rhee. Part of the impetus came from the U.S.-China lobby, whose members include Tommy Corcoran and Robert Emery of the United Fruit law firm Corcoran, Foley, Youngman, and Rowe, and Claire Booth Luce, who is also a leading member of the P2-linked Citizens Alliance for Mediterranean Freedom. The APACL itself, however, was the outgrowth of British SIS Moral Rearmament Movement, MRA, organized after World War I by Frank Buckman and the Oxford Group, with substantial backing from Robert Cecil. And I believe the Cecil's closely linked to the Vanderbilt family. The senior peer of most reactionary oligarchical faction in Britain. MRA's goal was to forge a German, US, Japanese, British axis against the Soviet Union, and quickly recruited Deputy Reichsfuhrer Rudolf Hess and SS Chief Heinrich Himmler to its ranks. Another outgrowth of MRA in Asia was Reverend Moon's Unification Church. This is how the Moonies got brought into the CNP, the Council for National Policy, and part of the Christian right, despite being a cult that believes Jesus failed and some Korean guy is the new Christ. The Moon's Unification Church, which hosted the World Anti-Communist League's meetings of WACL ends. Roger Pearson, the chairman of the WACL from 1976 to 78, epitomizes the British SIS control over this body. Pearson is an overt race scientist who has been on the board of Policy Review, the publication of British SIS's Heritage Foundation, and on the board of similar publications of the American Security Council, along with figures of former CIA Chief of Counterintelligence James Jesus Angleton and Lady Hamilton, whose husband was the man Rudolf Hess sought to reach his flight to recruit the British into the direct support of the Nazis' drive east. And that's the Georgetown set. James Jesus Angleton. The man said to be behind Pearson is Sir Robert Gare, of Gare and Nig, his full title. One of the more curious specimens of British Secret Intelligence Service. Educated at the University of Edinburgh, Gare was a member of the Allied military government of Italy, AMGOT, which set up the combination of the black nobility, mafia, and Sicilian separatists used later by Gelli's propaganda duo Freemasonic Lodge to carry out a wave of coup attempts and assassinations. Gare has maintained his ties to circles behind the propaganda duo as Grand Cross of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, members of the Royal Academy of Sicily, and president of the Sicilian Anthropological Society. He has held many posts that proclaim him one of the leading monarchist genealogists and eugenicists, but among these posts, the most curious was the aide-de-camp to Governor Jimmy Carter, whose brother was later recruited by propaganda duo. Gare is only one of several connections between the World Anti-Communist League and propaganda duo. Another leading U.S. member of the WACL is Admiral Thomas Moorer, who was named in court testimony by financier Michel Sindona as part of the 1979 P2 coup plot in Sicily that had involved Secretary of State Alexander Haig and former CIA Director Stansfield Turner. Moore is also on the board of Western Goals International, whose European head, Dr. Karol Sitko, is an intimate friend of P2-linked Henry Kissinger and his controller Fritz Kramer. The WACL joins many of the actual controllers of the Malmo International and affiliated fascist groups. Otto von Habsburg reportedly played an important role in organizing the World Anti-Communist League 1979 meeting in the old Nazi stronghold of Asuncion, Paraguay. The WACL's 1980 meeting in Geneva, Switzerland was reportedly attended by associates of Francois Gounod, one of the top bankers for the Fascist International. The Buckley family has also been closely associated with WACL through such members as Marvin Liebman, a former member of the Young Communist League, who became the chief fundraiser for China's lobby before performing a similar role for the Buckley's National Review and Young Americans for Freedom. The World Anti-Communist League Latin America regional branch, the CAL, based in Guadalajara, Mexico, brings together such death squads as AAA and Mano Blanco, as well as Cuban exile groups as Alpha 66 and the Movimiento Nacional Cubano, whose leaders Hector and Guillermo Novo Semple were convicted for the Letelier assassination in Washington, D.C. by car bomb, in addition to the P2 controlled group Ordine Nuovo. WACL's European branch, WCSE, joins together members of Habsburg's Pan-European Union and of the Eurorite, itself an amalgam of fascist groups ranging from the MSI of Giorgio Almirante of the Belgian National Front. These are few of the combat units that are coordinated through the fascist alternate United Nations. There are so many more World Anti-Communist League links, but I guess those are the ones at the top to both the P2 Lodge and Council for National Policy. But it's just a ragtag of post-leftist, post-right groups that serve as destabilization agents, more so for the continued rule of banking and aristocratic interests. But anyway, that's a good place to stop. I did post the link in the chat there. He's got Turbo Dinosaur power. No, the Yellow Can, Yerba Mate, the Yellow Can cult that's going to be joining the CNP once I'm admitted as a member, for the IROM publishing empire that's going to be coming out. This is Yellow Can cult. This is better than Turbo Dinosaur power. Okalot, here, I'll read some of the comments here. You are in the light, you lightweight. Yeah, he likes me to be peering out from the dark in my black leather blazer. So Iram is the name of the fellow on the tube. That's right. That's Iram is a Arabic name because I'm a Muslim Brotherhood agent. He posts no biography and pontificates from his Ted Kaczynski bolt hole and fails to say who pays him. I just told you. It's a Yellow Can cult. I say he's a well-informed hangout. Yeah, we are all hanging out. So this Iram feller, magical space lizard from the hollow moon, maybe. Reads slower Iram, better. He's got turbo dinosaur power. Okala says South Korea has several Catholic presidents, unique in Asian society. I mean, Vietnam too. But I think we removed some of the Catholic presidents in Vietnam, which is also interesting. Yeah, as long as the Catholic culture is generally, acceptable in traditional societies, but if you try to go against them and say, well, Catholicism is against usury and Catholicism is against, um, you know, these other aspects of their agenda, population control, and that's when they think about taking you out. Because as a Catholic, you're not supposed to be talking about this anymore under neo-trad Catholicism. And so that's why they take these people out. Society, so why Iram? I don't know what he's saying. I got a thumbs up in the chat as well as a thumbs up on my video. That's so cool. And I love Okala's use of in case if I can't understand what he's saying in the chat, he also leaves me. So is he boy? Is he girl? This guy's funny. All right. Yeah, have a good night. There's 6 people in the chat. Therefore, there should be 6 likes. There's no excuse. Maybe you haven't been introduced to the light yet, the light of the yellow can. 8 people in the chat. 8 people and 4 likes. Come on, guys. Anyway, I'll be setting up a Patreon, a Venmo, all sorts of funding conduits so you guys can give me untaxable income. Thanks a lot. Have a good night and keep reading. This has been IROM. I read old magazines, and we're going to be coming back next show with work on the Christian Coalition and the Chicago Boys' bloody hand behind Cheney's campus Gestapo. And this also includes the Buckleys down to this very bone of these operations. Oh, I'm sure he's given a compliment. I just read through him really quick. Sway Guevara sent you. Yeah, Sway got Q-tubed. I don't know, Q-tubed. It has become Q-tube. Pretty much anybody that doesn't like Q isn't in the controlled conspiracy culture. This cult of Q gets canned on the right. So I would call it Q-tubed. But thanks for coming over from Sway Guevara's channel. Everybody, go visit Sway Guevara. I think he does a lot of good work. Go visit The Antidote, John Brisson. And yeah, I don't agree with everything that they say. I don't like stuff that focuses on, oh man, the Jews run everything. Because it's actually kind of the other way around. Jews are used as underneath the former Meyer Lansky networks and the Zeev Jabotinsky networks by an extension of British imperial interests. But and so we really shouldn't be blaming them and making them the greatest oppressors, but still the connections are all valid, and I still promote their work. Um, they shouldn't come under fire for expressing their opinions. So have a good night. I have to go to my third third position, third positionist, third shift job, and slave labor for low wages. So sorry, I have to log off now. Just waiting for those likes to come in, but they're not for this sympathy show. So bye bye.